HumanX Ventures presents Inside the Coaching Mind. Terry Pettit coached the University of Nebraska's first national championship team in 1995 and put the state of Nebraska on a path to volleyball greatness. Now, Terry mentors coaches, writes books, and gives talks about leadership and team building to corporate and business audiences. Here's Coach Pettit to take us inside the coaching mind.
David, thank you so much. And we want to thank HumanX Ventures, an organization that recruits talent and develops talent and mentors talent. And we have a very talented guest today, Mike Malaska. Mike is, I guess I could use the word legendary in the golf business as a teacher and an educator and someone who developed a process that can help 99% of the people out there that aren't superstars become better golfers. He's won all kinds of awards, top 50 teachers for Golf Digest, top 100 for Golf Magazine. He was head of the Nicholas Golf Clinics in Japan for 3 years, and I believe he won awards there. But golf isn't the main reason that I wanted to get Mike as a guest. I've been tremendously influenced as a volleyball coach by people in other worlds, people that were great educators. Anson Dorrance was a gentleman, Christopher Alexander, who wrote a book called A Pattern Language. The first golf book that impacted me was Mike Hebron's book, See the Inside, Move and Feel the Impact the Outside. But I don't think anybody is a better communicator of the golf swing than Mike Malaska. And I also believe that there are things that happen in the golf swing that happen in other sports, particularly volleyball and attack. Mike Malaska, welcome to Inside the Coaching Mind. I'm thrilled that you're here.
Well, Terry, thanks so much for having me. I mean, first of all, I admire you as a coach, and I've had you as a student. So it's interesting to be on both sides of who you are. I find it interesting. Most of us that are coaches, a lot of times when we're put on the opposite side, it's interesting what we learn. When you become a student, I've learned a lot about myself relative to coaching others by becoming a student of something other than golf. For instance, I play the guitar. So I have a lot of friends or a couple that are phenomenal guitar players that help me play. And then I become the student. So I think it's important as a coach to also be a student. And it's been quite a journey for me over the last 50 years of doing what I do, to learn about how people learn and how coaches coach, the ones that are successful, and how they're able to connect with their students or their team and get them on the same page so that they all are looking at things that make them better players, better team members, whatever it might be.
Well, when I was at Lewisburg College in North Carolina, I also coached tennis and I taught clinics to the general public. And when somebody would walk out on the court for a lesson, as they were coming toward me, I would toss a tennis ball. And if they caught it on their racket, I thought, well, this is going to be not easy, but we've got something to work with here. But if the ball missed the racket and fell on the court, when people fly in to get a lesson from you, how quickly can you evaluate how they learn, what their kinesthetic awareness is, whether they have any insight into sequencing in golf? What's the first thing you ask them to do?
Well, the first thing is I just watch them walk up to me because I've been trained. I was at a company. We had a big company in San Diego called THE, Therapy, Health, and Education. We trained a lot of professional athletes. We also had the general public. And so I became very aware of people's gait patterns. And so when somebody walks up to me, as they're walking up to me, I can see by the way they walk, I can pretty much evaluate a lot of what's going on in their bodies. then it's very easy for me. You throw a ball at them and have them catch it, which I've done that, but I have them, one of the first things I have them do is throw a ball. And then I take them with a baseball bat over to a tree and I say, I want you to just hit the tree. Well, as soon as they do those things, they walk up to me. I see their gait pattern, which tells me about where they are physically, what's going on. I look at their posture because I've been trained in posture alignments and how they affect people. And then I have them throw a ball and hit the tree. I got them. I mean, I know who they are kinesthetically. I know what their DNA for motion is. I know how their body connects movements. And so then for me, it's making them aware of who they are and how we're going to get them to reach their potential as that person, not as some model that they see on TV.
Mm-hmm. Well, you said, and I did the same thing evaluating athletes. Like if the knees weren't in some kind of alignment with the feet and the hips, I usually walk to the next court because I'm coaching a highly competitive college team. Now, if I'm a high school coach or developmental coach, I've got to coach somebody that may be out of alignment.
No
And
question.
okay, so give an example. So you and I, so people understand what we're talking about. Give an example of somebody that's out of alignment that comes up to you and wants to get better.
Okay, so let's look at the feet, for instance. So when somebody walks up to me, if they walk up and one foot's turned out and they're walking like this and one foot's turned out, that foot that turns out means that hip, that side of their body is dysfunctional, which means they're going to tend to move away from that dysfunctional side. So in a golf swing, if somebody comes walking up and their right foot's turned out, then what I know is as they swing, they're going to tend to hang out on their left side. And forcing them to move into their right side is going to be very difficult to do. So then I take that pattern. I say, okay, here's who you are. You're going to, if you want to use a method, or an idea, here's stack and tilt, which was stay on your left side, stay there and swing. Well, the reality is that method fits a certain number of people, and it allows them to play golf with who they are and not ask them to be somebody they're not. Now, the option is you can fix what's going on your right side, become more functional. But what I found over the years is a lot of people don't want to go down that road. They just want to know, what do I need to do for me right now? Who I am, with who I am. What do I need to do to be able to play the best I can play? And if they violate who they are physically, they're going to have a hard time making that work. Even though in theory, that's going to be better for them, the reality is it doesn't fit the person who's standing in front of you. So, I mean, that for me is huge, to be able to help somebody identify who they are, what they're able to do, and how that's going to work. Not here's who somebody else is, and we need to fit you into this mold. I mean, there's very few people who fit the mold of what they call a perfect golf swing, which is interesting. Those models are dysfunctional human beings that they gather that information from. I was a tour player. I mean, I could stand up here right now at 70 years old and touch the floor with both hands. I can do things that most people would go, oh my gosh, how do you do that? Well, I'm not a normal person. So you got to be careful about models and where they came from and how much benefit they're going to be. And I've just learned over the years how to look at people. Like you just said, you walk up, if your right foot's turned way out, you got a problem in your right side, you're not going to want to load that side. Can we fix it? Probably. Do you want to? No. Okay, so here's what your swing's going to look like. So I become the person that's in front of me. I know enough about physiology that when somebody walks up, I see who they are and I become them internally. And I go, okay, if that was me, what would I have to do to get the most out of me? And that's kind of how I teach, which is an instinctive thing over 50 years of learning what I've learned.
Well, you're a multi-sport athlete. So you're a former baseball player, basketball player. I mean, you did what all of us did that are close to our age. We played everything, and we did it usually without supervision. So we taught ourselves. In volleyball, as the higher you go, size becomes more important. But at a high school level, if you have arm speed, you can play. I don't care if you're 5'2", 5'6". If you have arm speed and can throw something with speed, you can learn to attack a volleyball with speed and play. So, and to me, the golf swing is a similar motion. The posture is different. You would be kind of throwing the ball into the ground. So my question is this: do do to become a great golfer, would you have had to learn a throwing motion early in your athletic career?
No question. I mean, and there's all kinds of science and information about the three basic skills that we learn before we're 5 years old: catch, hit, and throw. Now, we all learn those, and then it's how much do you develop those skills? So like I say, when I have somebody throw a ball, I get to see how they sequence, how their shoulders work relative to their hips, how well they understand how this lever system and this arm speed works. And like in golf, which you just said about volleyball, 80 some odd percent of the speed or the distance you hit a golf ball, or the speed, comes from this lever, this arc of this arm, and the lever system that's in your wrist. That's 80%. Now, that's not me, that's Sasha McKenzie and a lot of these biomechanics people. So what's interesting to me is when in the developmental cycle, they don't start with those skills. They start with global movement patterns, the body, shift your weight, use the ground. You're hearing all this about ground forces. Well, ground forces are only good if this knows how to react to those ground forces. So that initial learn how to throw, I can't tell you how many people I've had to teach how to throw because they go to throw and they are not very good at it. It's like, okay, whoa, wait a minute. Let's start with this. Let me help you. Let's get this to work. So we start getting this to work right here. I say, okay, now once we get that, now we're going to go to the elbow in this part. We're going to get this to work. And if they don't know how to do that and they struggle, then that's part of what I have them do, because the better they learn how this lever system works, the better they're going to be able to create speed and play golf. So it's a very, very important skill.
So growing up, if I wasn't a pitcher, but if I threw a fastball, it would have been around 75 miles an hour. My brother could throw over 90. So all other things set aside, he would have better potential as a golfer because he could create that kind of arm speed.
Correct. That's
disappointing. And he did. He did hit the ball. He did hit the ball further. His short game wasn't. Okay,
well,
go ahead.
I'm going to use somebody as an example of Goose Gossage, who's a really good friend of mine, who was an idol of mine when I came out of college. I mean, when I was in college, I still hadn't lost the baseball thing. I wanted to be a pitcher. And he was a superstar back then. I mean, he could throw in the hundreds, 100 miles an hour. And I got to meet him 5 or 6 years ago at a tournament. And as a golfer, he couldn't break 100. And I see him over there. And of course, he's got some problems with his feet. But he's standing there and he's got this god-awful looking swing. And I go over to him and I say, sir, what are you trying to do? And then he says, well, I want to play golf. And I said, well, so what did you do for a living? And finally, we kind of, okay, Goose, I know who you are. So how did you throw a baseball? Well, he says, I could throw it. He says, I threw it hard enough. I threw it through a car wash. The ball wasn't wet. And I'm going, okay, so you've got a lot of arm speed, but you're standing here. Now his feet are broken down, so he can't use his body much. All I did was get his grip on there correct. And I taught him, basically, we got him, what he was doing was throwing pitches, which is how I hit shots. So if I push harder with this finger as I go through the ball, that curves the ball to the left. If I push harder with this finger, it curves it to the right. If I just let both of them go at the same time, that's a fastball. So I related that to him. We got his grip right. And all of a sudden, he went from couldn't break 100 to now he's in the low mid 70s all the time. But he had a lot of speed here, still does. I mean, he still hits a driver 280, 290, and he can't move his body, but he has good lever system and good understanding of that, which I find it interesting in my industry. They keep talking about taking your hands out of the game. And I'm going, are you kidding me? I mean, that's where your speed comes from. Now, good players don't feel their hands that much, but that's because of their background and what they've learned to do with them. So, a lot of what I do coaching is to find out where somebody is in that learning curve and get them involved, and people can get better. I mean, I see people all the time say, I just can't play this game. Well, they got the wrong concepts. There is no skill development in what they do. They're just randomly trying stuff that assumes levels of control they don't have. So, and I'm sure you do the same thing with volleyball.
Sure.
I mean, it's about finding where somebody is deficient in movement and helping them be better at that. And a lot of times it goes back to little teeny small movement patterns that they have never really developed. And once they understand them, boom, all of a sudden they're hitting the ball farther. They're having more fun with the game. Now, it's not what they see on TV, but I don't really care what they see on TV. I care what makes them better as an athlete relative to who they are.
Well, one of the interesting things in serving is incredible now in volleyball. It's changed dramatically in the last 5 to 10 years. And it used to be that balls went over the net probably around 30 miles an hour. They were more popped. Now they go over it. The ideal speed is probably 40, 41, 42 miles an hour. Plus, that ball's very light, so it moves. Currents in the air, how the contact with the hand. I would say 95% of college servers serve a jump serve. So they jump up in the air, strike the ball, and try not to have topspin. And the thing that puzzles me about this is on a routine ground ball to shortstop, the shortstop isn't going to jump up in the air and throw the ball. He can do that. He can do that on a play where he goes back to his left. But he's pushing off the ground. He's creating force off the ground. So I don't understand why coaches have players that are 5'6", 5'7", are not creating a good deal of altitude. Why they aren't using the ground to create more speed off the serve? Am I wrong in thinking that way?
Well, I don't think you're wrong. I think it comes down to, again, that jumping or using ground forces. It's the same in tennis, that vertical force is a speed producer, but it's very it's more detail oriented into what you have to be able to do to add that part in where it actually adds speed. We have golfers now, a lot of them, that they talk about vertical force and they go back and they start down and then they feel like they're jumping right straight up in the air. In fact, a lot of them are airborne off both feet when they hit the ball.
Right.
And I go, okay, but let's look at certain parts. When I watch that in golf, I watch their core and I watch how the center of their body moves relative to the golf ball. And they're able to create that force, but not invade the space that their arms are trying to swing into. So in golf, because you're bent over and then you jump, what has to happen is when they jump and they go vertical, they can't have their hips move closer to the ball. So they jump up in the air, and it's interesting how they jump and what happens to the angle in their body increases as they go down towards the ball. And then as they come into it, they jump, but they move away from the ball as they jump. So that creates this force out in front of them. Now, that's a very difficult pattern for 95% of people to do. It assumes a lot of levels of control and spatial awareness. So I think that depending on the athlete, ground forces can be valuable. However, where I'm at, if they don't use the ground forces correctly, it doesn't matter how much they try to do it, it actually gets in their way. Right. So not sure how to quite equate that. I played volleyball in junior high. I mean, I was on the volleyball team, and that we used to try to jump and serve it. And every time I left the ground, I was terrible. Uh, However, I was really good in a swimming pool playing water polo as a forward throwing the ball, because I was a pitcher, and in water polo you use the water, but when you throw, your arm goes forward and your hips go backward, because that's the resistance that you
Right.
use to make your arm go faster. So, I was good in a pool, but I was not very good when I jumped in the air trying to serve a volleyball or a tennis ball. I mean, I'm a lot better in tennis and I'm not bad, but as long as my feet stay touching the ground, I've got control. As soon as I jump, like a lot of those tennis players do, I mean, it's like I don't have anything to relate to. So, I mean, I think it depends on the athlete there. And there's so much information now. It comes back to which information is going to make the individual better. Some can handle that, some can't. And that's just who they are.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned earlier, I can walk up to the golf range or almost any sport and probably identify what's going on and maybe what might help. But I don't have much kinesthetic awareness right now in the golf swing. So I can tell maybe when I move forward, but so I can help people more than I can help myself, unless I have somebody video or somebody that understands the golf swing. As a kid, at 19 years old, 20 years old, so you win the Utah Open, and as I understand it, you hadn't had a lesson up to that point.
No,
So you're just kind of doing what your body tells you to do to hit a golf ball. Um, at what point after that, I'm jumping way ahead here, did you start to see things in people around you when you're watching them that you thought you could help them, that you understood what was happening in a different way than the average person? Was that when you were working with Egoscue? Was it before that?
yeah, I always had a good eye for motion. When I was hitting, I could watch guys hit, and I could see things in the way they use the bat relative to how it worked and whether they planed the bat correctly and all kinds. So I could always see that. And when I came to golf was never golf to me. Golf was a low outside pitch in baseball that I hit to center field. I mean, that's how I processed it in my head. And the club face was the bat. So the heel of
Right.
so this was the bat right here. It wasn't the shaft. So that hit it to right field. This hit it to center field. This hit it to left field. I mean, so the club face was always in my hands, and then it was like a baseball bat, and all I was doing was using the bat to hit the ball different places. And so it was really easy because the ball was still. That to me made the game easier. Most people say, well, the ball's still, so it's harder. Well, I'm going, no. If you gave me a ball on a tee in baseball, it's easier to hit the ball off the tee than it is with it coming at me at 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 miles an hour. So I always could see motion. And once I understood the human body, once I got involved with Egoscue and I understood joint alignments and how the body moves, I started to see things in a whole different light. I mean, I watch sports on TV and I watch the athletes and I watch the basketball players as they walk out to the center, and I look at their feet and I'm going, okay, this guy can go to his right. He can't go to his left. Here's a guy who can jump. And then I watch what happens. And it's really interesting how precise I got at being able to evaluate athleticism and even the best athletes in the world. And it's really not that difficult because the body works off 90-degree angles. It's just like you were saying, if you see somebody whose knees are pinched way in and their feet are out here, they're not going to have a very good vertical jump. They're not going to run very fast. There's a lot of things they can't do. And if somebody shows up
And you're probably looking at an injury. I mean,
oh,
if we ask them to be dynamic.
oh, yeah, at
Well,
Egoscue, we used to go to the combine. We used to go to the combine and look at athletes, and the only reason we were there is to just tell people, okay, this guy has a potential to have this injury because of his functional or lack of functional alignment. He may be a superstar, but he can't do this. And so if he has to do this much, there's a big chance for injury. It's easy to predict injury. So like at golf swings, I watch some of these guys and the way they're going at it for speed. And I'm going, okay, I get the speed thing, but do you realize the forces you're placing to get that speed on your body that's not designed to handle those forces? Now, when that happens, it's not a matter of if they're going to get hurt, it's when. And I've been lucky to see that.
I grew up as a caddy, and then I worked at a golf course all the way through high school. And I remember somebody when Palmer was in his prime, when Palmer and Nicklaus were competing against each other, somebody saying to me, Nicklaus is going to last a lot longer. And it was, they felt that there were more compensations in Palmer's swing. I've never talked with anybody about this, and I've heard you talk about Nicklaus, but do you think that was an accurate statement? I mean, certainly Palmer's career didn't last as long. He had a tremendous impact on the sport, but were there more compensations in Arnold Palmer's golf swing?
Yeah. There was a lot of things that he did that created and required a tremendous amount of strength to pull them off. And so where Jack was a lot more efficient, even though people talked about his flying right elbow and what he did. Well, now you've got all the biomechanics people telling you, well, if you want to create maximum force, you want to get your hips turned as far as you can. You want to get your shoulders turned, your arms as high as you can get them, and create as much downward force as you can so you can use that to move away from the ball and create more speed. Well, Palmer was more tight, like a Hogan kind of thing. And so he fought those forces around him, where Jack instinctively learned how to use those forces to his advantage. Now, he was strong, but a lot of what he did in his swing was extremely efficient.
Yeah.
So,
I saw a quote of yours the other day that golf saved your life as a young person. What did you mean by that?
Well, I had kind of a difficult childhood relative to things that happened to me. And it wasn't my parents, it was some other things that happened around me that I had a hard time dealing with life in general. And I was introduced to the golf course by chance. And the golf course and being out there and having the challenge of hitting a ball around different things, it was a safe haven for me. Every time I went to the golf course, I felt calm. I felt like, that it had its arms around me and that I was safe, that I didn't feel in other situations. And so I still, to this day, I mean, it doesn't matter what the level of golf course is. If you take me to a parking lot and I walk onto a golf course, I feel a connection, and I feel safe and it's enjoyable and I want to be there, and so, like I say, as a kid, it became a place that I could go where I felt safe. And I loved the challenge of the game, not the swing. The swing was never hard for me to hit a golf ball. What was fascinating to me was all of the different variables, the different lies, the grass, the wind, all of the clubs, and all these shots you could hit, and how much fun you could have curving the ball and make it do this, make it do that. And so I fell in love and fascinated with controlling that golf ball, and I just couldn't get enough of it. Still can't. I mean, I just played a tournament in Mexico, and I've had some health issues. I got a bad knee, and I just said, okay, well, how can I play? What can I do? What adjustments can I make, knowing what I make, and still play and have fun? And so the game has always, and should to everybody, fascinate them relative to their connection with humanity, your own self, and how you move, and nature. And you got this little ball that you're trying to maneuver around this golf course. I mean, it's just, there's very few games that you can do that and do it as long and still have fun with. It's awesome.
On your website, Malaska golf.com, I went and watched a series that you did where you returned to the place where you won the Utah Open when you were 20 years old. And as I listened to you, it's different than anything else you've ever done. As I listened to you, what came across was this place is sacred to me. What happened here is sacred to me. And so some of the things you're talking about, it's a safe place. I feel the same way about a goat ranch that I learned to play golf on. You know, my dad had been the greenskeeper there, but there's not a green there that's bigger than a pancake. But every time I go home, I want to be there. I want to go out there. That's where I
Yeah.
learned to do those things. I that came through in those 5 short videos. Is that accurate?
It's extremely accurate. I mean, the golf course I grew up on and that golf course that I won the Utah Open on basically changed my life or gave me life. I mean, I could look back and say, well, if I'd have gone some other direction, who knows what would have happened. But I know that the little 9-hole golf course, Nibley Park, that I grew up on, that initially ignited the fascination for the game. And then Ogden Country Club, where I won the Utah Open, where I was like, this kid, this amateurs, he can't do that. I mean, he's playing against these tour players. He's not had much experience. And the connection I had and have always had with that golf course is incredible. I mean, I walk on those two places and it's home. It's who I am. It exposed me to my potential in golf. And I love being there. It's just like I say, I'd like to tell my wife that, and she goes, well, what about me? And I said, well, that you're very special, and there is but this is kind of a different connection with those two facilities. And I'm glad that came across, because I think for everybody, golf, the course they grow up on or where they enjoy the game, can be more than just a physical outlet. It's a connection with you as a moving spirit, and how you connect with the game and the ball and the golf course. That's a learning experience every time. Golf sports are an athletic expression of you through a game. And so it's not a science. They keep trying to turn golf and all these sports into science. And I'm not saying science isn't important, but at the end of the day, it's an athletic expression of you, artistic expression of you through a game. Athletic, artistic. It's not a science. Science is the study of what's happening. It's not necessarily the way to do it.
Well, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And then you went on that little 9-hole course. You went on and worked in the pro shop and probably did other things there. I used to mow the pipeline. Our watering system was above ground, not below ground. So these pipes ran along the fairway, and we had to go out and mow. And that to me is holy. I mean, it's where I learned to value work. It's where and hitchhiking to Gary Country Club and caddying there, and then working for several years as a greenskeeper for $1.25 an hour. But I got all the free Cokes and Chocola that I could drink. But things come naturally to you. Golf came naturally to you because you were a multi-sport athlete. So
Right.
you wouldn't have hit that golf ball well had you not played baseball. And today we're discouraging kids from doing all those things, which is crazy. These. Go ahead, Mike.
No, it's ridiculous. This whole specialized now there's some gymnastics and things, but they start trying to get kids to specialize in a sport by the time they're 10, 11, 12 years old. Well, if you'd have told me that, I never would play golf. Golf would never even have been in my deal. It was just exposed to me. But When you look at the development of the human body and you look at the growth plates and how the body develops, the more movement patterns you're exposed to, and the more you have to apply those basic skills that you learn, hit, throw, and catch in different planes of motion, develops the body physically more balanced, the more it's exposed to different planes of motion of movement while the growth plates are developing. Now, if you just are focused on one particular movement pattern, then what's going to happen is your whole growth plates in your body starts to develop around that pattern, which builds a dysfunction in the body. So, I know enough about it now when I look at what I did, and I look at Jack Nicklaus's background, and I look at Hale Irwin's background, and I look at Tiger's background and what he did. I mean, these are all multi-sport, multi-dimensional people that decided to specialize in golf. But their overall hand-eye coordination and development was about multiple planes of motion. Forget the sport. Your body's a pattern machine. You learn a pattern, and then it's how it develops and how it applies that pattern in different motions. So the more motions you apply those three patterns in, the better you're going to be as an athlete, and the better your body's going to be. It's not my idea. It's just how the body develops. We're hunter-gatherers by design. So the more you hunt, the better you are.
You said something that I just love. The other day I wrote on a blog that I do, I listed all the patterns I look for. I cannot stop looking for patterns. If I go to Costco, I watch how people walk, or I watch what people are buying, or if I see a baseball game or anything, I try and figure out what are the healthy patterns, what are the patterns that aren't working. And I think that's native to humans, but I think it's even more native to teachers and coaches, that we keep searching for what works. When I was looking at podcasts that you've done, somehow I ran across a quote from Stan Musial. Maybe it was on Twitter today. And he said, when I played, I knew what was going to happen. Well, didn't matter whether I was in the field or whether I was at bat. When I was at bat, I knew what the next pitch was likely to be. When I was at field, I knew what that batter was likely to do, until I was in my early 40s, and then I started to doubt myself, and things changed. But up to that point, I just trusted my instincts. Now, his instincts were world class. He undoubtedly had better vision than we had. But in your golf game, up until you were 20 years old, you trusted your instincts. I'm curious about that Utah Open. You win it, and you're playing against tour professionals. And I understand that you trusted your instincts in the golf swing, but you couldn't have hit every green, so you had to learn, somebody had to teach you, or you had to teach yourself what to do when the ball was in a bunker, or what to do when the ball was above your feet or below your feet. So how did you learn some of the subtleties of the game?
Well, this little 9-hole golf course again, at night when there wasn't anybody, I'd go out and I'd create situations. I mean, I just loved the challenges. So there was one little bunker when I started there was only one bunker on the golf course. And it was a greenside bunker. So I'd go out to that little bunker with my shag bag, which is interesting. I grew up with a shag bag, which meant I had to pick up every ball I hit.
Right.
It's another thing. That was another discipline that I had that most people don't have. So that shag bag kept me focused on controlling where the ball goes, because I had to pick them up, and those balls meant something to me. So I would go out in that bunker, and I'd say, okay, well, there's a green way over there. It's not the green it was supposed to be. There's one that's 150 yards away. Well, let me see. Okay, so if I get in here and I've got this line, I wonder if I could hit a 5-wood out of here, or I wonder if I could take a 4-iron and hit a cut shot, or So I was fascinated with all these different things, and so different lies of the golf ball. And I'd take a sand wedge, and I'd have a greenside bunker, and I'd say, well, I just saw on TV where somebody said I'd sit there and try to hit the sand and see how the club was going through the sand. All of a sudden, I'd go, oh, that's how that works. So my curiosity and my fascination when I would see somebody, and most of what I did was by imitating what I saw on TV. I'd watch the tour players, or I'd watch somebody who was pretty good at our club, at the little 9-hole course, and I'd watch them, and I go, okay, and then I'd go over and try it, and all of a sudden something would start to work, and so then it became part of my arsenal. So now I get on the golf course, and I'd see a lie or a situation. Well, I'd already practiced it. Uphill, downhill, side hill. I even practice hitting balls out of trees. People go, well, and then, a couple times in my career, ball was sitting up in a bush about waist high, and I'm going, okay, well, it's fine. It's teed up. I'm just going to turn over here and hit it like this, and I hit it up there on the green or by the people are going, how the heck did you do that? Well, I used to practice hitting out of bushes. What? I go, well, it just was there, so I tried it. And then I've shown.
Well, you probably know David Cook. David's a friend, and we met by accident. But sometimes when we've been playing, and actually was in Utah, he'd take out an old large pencil and put the ball on top of the pencil. And of course, you can hit the ball further, but when it's teed up that high. But you're talking about is curiosity or taking charge of your own development. So how do we teach people to take charge of their own development?
Well, I challenge them. I give them little skills and tasks, and I say, okay, here's how this relates to it. Let me raise to a golf swing, but I want you to practice this little thing that doesn't look like a golf swing, but I want to see if you can do this and get to where you can do this 7 out of 10 times, or whatever it might be. So I just say, just have fun with this and see how good you can get. And here's how good I am at it. And they go, oh, wow, I can't even do it. I said, okay, that's a reason why I'm pretty good at what I do, is because I've developed these skills. And they don't see them as golf skills necessarily. It's like people used to come to golf schools, and I'd get them on, I had them in the practice area, and I'd have them tee a ball up. I'd give them a 7-iron and say, okay, now we're going to learn how to make it curve to the left, curve to the right, go straight, go low and high. We're not going to hit it hard, but we're just going to use the club face to make it curve. And I can't tell you how many people would go, I have a question. I didn't come to a golf school to learn how to hit it crooked. I want to hit it straight. Well, my answer to that was, well, if you don't know crooked, you're never going to find straight. And if you do, when it goes away, you're going to have no idea how to fix it. So just having fun with a club, making the ball curve, just putting spin on a ball off a tee is going to make you so much better player, because all of a sudden you have a connection with the face. And that's what I see. I see a curve in the air. That relates back to a face angle, which relates back to a feel in me, which turns into I'm reacting to a picture. And once people start to learn how to do that, then it exposes their artistic part of them. They become better players, and there's not that much in the game, and not the coaches I see out there they don't even talk about, which to me is ridiculous.
Well, something that I've encouraged coaches to do, and I've yet to see one do it. One side of a volleyball court is 30 feet by 30 feet. Right. So you got 900 square feet. But I've encouraged them to break that down, and it's very easy to do, into 9 different boxes. You just draw a line every 10 feet both ways. You've got 9 different boxes. Because if it's like you're on a graph board, and even without thinking, kids will start to see which boxes they score the most points in. If we hit it to this box over here every day, the ball's not coming back. But I haven't persuaded anybody to do it. It's kind of like, looking at your swing in a mirror to some degree. You become aware. You develop some awareness. My daughters used to hate it when I would have them. Somebody'd pass the ball and they're setters, and they'd have to come out and let the ball hit them in the forehead. If it hit them in the forehead, they were in the right position. But it looked goofy. However, they had to do it till they had, got so many, and they both developed into good players. So I like that idea I just think uh, uh, that every year at the national championship, there's a convention, and they always invite people to come in and talk about volleyball. And I've always challenged them that you've got to get people in from other disciplines who were successful, because I think the best coaches see something else. They'll see a locomotive go by, or they'll see something else in a different game. Christopher Alexander wrote this book called A Pattern Language, a pattern that he sees in the best buildings, whether it's a lean-to or a cathedral. He sees those patterns. I would want Christopher Alexander to talk, or I would want Mike Malaska to talk, or the best softball pitcher that we've ever had in this country to talk, because the best coaches, I think, take things from other places. So I'm curious, who have you seen present, talk, or a book you've read that doesn't have anything to do with golf that you've said, boy, there's application here into what I do?
Well, the book that spurred me on initially, Peter Goskew had me read a book, and it was by Ralph Weird. And the book was Athletic Motion. And what it was a delve into how the body and the joints work when and most of it was evolved around throwing a javelin. And they talked about other sports, but it was focused, when the pictures in the book were more about throwing a javelin. But it described, how the hip sockets were working and how the joints in the shoulders were working, and where force was going through the body as you threw, and how the angles worked. And it had pictures that showed the angles and where the joints were. And once I saw that book and I went through it, I mean, I see those angles. I just see it. And Pete used to put a grid behind everybody. And so you'd walk up and you'd stand up against this grid. And, I'm still a little tilted, but you'd see people with a grid behind them. And then you'd see them from a side view with that same grid behind them. So you could see where their head was relative to their shoulders. And then you could see all these 90-degree angles, and you could see where they were violated. And then you could anticipate how the person was going to move. And so for me, I mean, when I watch a golf swing, I don't watch what most people watch. I watch how the joints move, and I see circles of force. And there's 9 basic circles of force that I'm watching. And so I'm more interested in those joint alignments and those circles of force than I am, in theory, what a golf swing should or shouldn't look like. Because if I get somebody where they're complementing how their body is designed to move, they get better fast. If they're fighting some of those alignments, it's unlikely that person's going to get better.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. I remember, I went out and had a couple sessions with Peter Goskew. While you were there, we sent Chris Hall out there. Our trainer said she'd never play again, and she came back, and God, her posture was better. She just looked different. Mandy Monson went there and went to Pete, worked for Pete every day during a summer. This is in the later 90s. She came back, jumped higher, did everything better. But you could see the minute she walked in that she was more functional. But you said something earlier. You said, well, we learn these things before we're 5. I'll bet if you go to a kindergarten today, if we just choose an arbitrary kindergarten, there aren't 15% of the kids that know how to throw, catch, or hit something.
Pete and I, back in the 80s, put a program together for the PGA. It was called the Swing Game. And we had a pilot program that we took into the school systems in San Diego. And I mean, I did a ton of work where this is back in the 80s now. Right. And we went in, looked at kids and where they were from a development perspective. This program was way, way ahead of its time. In fact, a lot of the PGA has used some of it since. But part of it was looking at kids in kindergarten and developing them and watching how they walked and watching, getting them to hit and throw. And it was incredible how bad they were. And this was in the 80s. Plus their diets were terrible. And, you look at what's happened to the human body, and it's designed for development, which is out of motion. And what's happened with society is they've basically taken motion out of our daily lives, and kids, and they sit and they do this, and they sit and they do this. And so through their development cycle, when they should be throwing and climbing and falling and twisting and running, they're not. And so their primate development patterns don't develop the way they should. The only reason the fitness industry exists is because of the lack of motion that we've put into our society. So it was fun for me to watch, and also alarming to see these young kids, how bad they were at 5 years old. They were already down the road of, they hadn't developed the skills they needed to at 5. And so it was fun, and it was alarming for me at the same time to see, like you just said, how few of them could throw a ball or kick a ball, and you're going, okay, well, if you go back to the primate sources of how we develop as a human being, run, catch, hit, throw, all those things are imperative for the development of the human body. And if you don't have them and you're not good at them, then your body starts to develop dysfunctional patterns, which is what this program was all about, bringing function back in. And it was a phenomenal program. They just nixed it because we were going to have PE teachers teaching kids how to swing a golf club. And they couldn't see how that could possibly ever work. But Pete was a genius. He still is. I mean, I talk to him once a month. I mean, the guy saved my life because he saved me from surgery. He basically gave me an aha moment and an awareness of the human body that I always was interested in, but I didn't really know how it worked. And so that was another one of those life-changing experiences, is running into Pete. Even as arrogant and as he was with me the first time I met him, there was something about him that fascinated me. I mean, all of my mentors are people that my wife says, why would you ever talk to that person? I mean, and I don't know why, but people, you have the same, I mean, the first time I met you, there's something about you that just, I want to be around this guy, because there's something really interesting here about how you move, how you talk. Pete was the same. A guy named Joe Nichols was another person that I was involved with. So that we're kind of
well, I'm gonna interrupt you there, because you talk a lot about Joe, but you have people need to go to your website, and I'm saying non-golfers need to go, because it may be as process oriented as any website that I've ever been to.
Yeah.
So people can learn from this website who are in business, because it is really well thought out. It's organic. It keeps growing, and there are several different fascinations in it. One is Malaska Golf Light. So if you're overwhelmed by 50 videos on the most efficient way to hit a golf ball, you can go to Malaska Golf Light, and there's 5 videos there. But it's I find it really interesting. And talk about that, about how you came to that and why you do it. And well, man, you've got a worldwide following.
Yeah, and I wish I had more, because the process isn't really, it is me, but it's what I've learned from many other people outside the game of golf, and how to put pattern development together. And it started with me evaluating how I learned to play golf, which was all the other sports I played. But my dad put a tire in my backyard and hooked it to a tree. And I went out there when I was 4 or 5 years old with a bat, and he put a dot on it. And he said, just hit this tree, hit the tube, just hit the tire, hit the tire, hit the tire. I mean, I hit the tire so many times between 4 or 5 years old and 17 when I quit playing baseball. I mean, hundreds of thousands of times. Now, what I learned was what they call line of compression and the application of force. but I learned it not because somebody told me how to do it. I learned it through feel, how I could create force into that tire. And that same movement pattern I put to golf. And the M system is basically, how do you train that most important pattern in sports that have a ball and a stick, which is called line of compression. And once you start it from a small pattern and you start to develop it, everybody's going to get significantly better. The problem is 90% of teachers don't even teach the most important things in the game, which is a connection to that line of compression. And so, you know, it's for me, because I spent a lot of time around learning and how do you teach patterns and processes and how does the body learn, I just kept trying to simplify it down to where I feel like it's, I mean, could I make it better? Maybe, but it's really, really good. And it's a pattern, like you said, it's going to help you in every sport. If you're a tennis player, it doesn't matter because it's an application of how the joints and forces work in the body. This just happens to be golf. But so I appreciate you saying that, but it's phenomenal. I mean, I've spent my whole life putting that M system together so people can have a process that they can continually make themselves better at. I practice that same process on a daily basis. It's why I was really good as a kid. That process helped me deal with all the other stuff I was told to try to do, and it helped me get back to where I was really a pretty good player again, and I still am, because I do it every day. It's just a matter of how good you get at that process. It's not about new. It's how you understand it and apply that process.
Well, you know, for several years I ran a summit in Vail on coaching, and I made a list today of things that have impacted me. I mentioned Christopher Alexander, Anson Dorrance, but I would take, if I was running that summit now, there are some videos in there that I would show people who coach different sports. One's an interaction with you and one of your teachers, and you're talking about a problem there, and he says, well, here's how I found the best way to do this, to get somebody to feel this, because it's that discussion that coaches need to have. And the best coaches, the absolute best coaches, share things. They do not say, "Wait, you got to sign a statement here that you're never going to share this with somebody." I never cared. I never. Believe it or not, we've had coaches do that. But I never.
I got to tell you quick. We had a big summit where they had all these teachers come in, and I'm not going to say who it was, but they were on stage the last day, the last group, the first day, and they got up there and they said, "Okay, if you have any recording devices or anything, you got to turn them off because the information we're about to give you is classified information." And I was just, okay. And they presented their information and did their whole thing. I was the first presenter the next morning. And I got up there, and that particular group was sitting in the back of the room. And I said, "Listen, if you have any recording devices or cameras or anything, turn them on, because there's something said in here that should be protected. It's just sharing of information." And I've always been that way. I mean, I was like, "Hey, if you're share it. I mean, classified information? Who the hell do you think you are?"
Well, yeah, I've seen a couple of those, but I didn't care. There were days, nobody's going to believe this. There were days I was coaching where the opposing coach, you know what a shoot around is in basketball. In volleyball, you have about an hour earlier in the day where you work on certain things. And there were days I let the opposing coach come in and watch, because we all do things differently, even with the same information.
That's
and
right.
In the long run, if his team got better or her team got better, it was better for me too. And yeah, Mike, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on today. And I really want, we probably, a large part of our listening audience are volleyball coaches or people interested in volleyball. You need to go to MalaskaGolf.com, and you need to hit on a couple videos because beyond golf, you need to see how a master teacher teaches and how they teach feel, not just the places the club needs to be. And we need to be able to take this into our own teaching, no matter what we're teaching, whether it's mathematics. I remember years ago when we first did the summit, somebody at USA Volleyball said, well, we don't have to worry about that. That's not competing with us. He's doing a thing on process. Process is everything.
It is.
Process is everything. And you have to provide some structure, and you have to provide opportunity within limits for some people to learn things by themselves. But I appreciate it today. Appreciate you being here. I also appreciate Human X Ventures, because without them, we can't have guests like Mike Malaska on. We're nearing Christmas. If you get a chance, go to terrypettit.com. You'll see 75 podcasts that were done there, but you'll also see a book that you can get online called Talent and the Secret Life of Teams, and it's all about process. Mike, thanks for being here, and to our audience, we look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to meet you, Terry, and work with you and see who you are as a golfer and as a coach. And you're impressed with both sides of it.
Thank you so much.
Inside the Coaching Mind is presented by Human X Ventures and is pleased to be a part of the Learfield Varsity Podcast Network. If you're on Facebook, look for the Inside the Coaching Mind group and join a vibrant discussion of volleyball and leadership. terrypettit.com is where you'll find Terry's books, writings, and downloads, as well as subscription links for all your podcast apps.